بعد أن قرأ معالي أحمد خليفة السويدي بيان قيام الاتحاد وانتخاب رئيس الاتحاد صاحب السمو الشيخ زايد بن سلطان آل نهيان، وانتخاب نائبه صاحب السمو الشيخ راشد بن سعيد آل مكتوم، وتشكيل الحكومة برئاسة الشيخ مكتوم بن راشد آل مكتوم. الآن نهنئ شعب دولة الإمارات ونقول مبروك قيام دولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة.
كان هذا الصوت الإعلامي الذي اختزل الكثير من التفاصيل والمشاهد الحية على الأحداث التاريخية في دولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة، والتي بدأت منذ إعلان قيام دولة الاتحاد في 2 ديسمبر عام 1971. الإعلامي القدير والشاعر الجليل خليل عيلبوني في لحظة تاريخية توجت بمشاعر فخر واعتزاز صاحبها قيام أمته.
To declare the founding of the first nation that was played for the desert for the first time. It was composed by his fellow artist Ibrahim Habibi on the way from the return to the Abu Dhabi radio. Ailabouni witnessed very important transformation points which made him possess a critical role in an archive in his home, which summarizes many prominent situations with the highly prominent figures that were highly influential in the history of the UAE, and the foremost of them were the late Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan, God rest his soul, and the great leaders of the UAE. Moreover, he has many visual records and audio records of that critical period of time. In addition to his writings, Abu Dhabi, The Time of the Beginnings book, which is considered one of the important and critical documents for anyone interested in culture in the UAE. Due to his work as a presenter of the Golden Black Gold program, which continued for 20 years in the Emirate of Abu Dhabi, which is considered a precedent in the UAE and the Arab world. His program was the element that attracted the attention of His Highness the Sheikh Zayed to him, and this shows the great important role of the project of liquefying gas. To turn the valve on, His Highness declared the start of exporting raw oil. Ailabouni started his career in Sawt al-Arab radio in the year 1961. Then he worked as an anchor at the radio of the Voice of Palestine, or Sawt Palestine, and then he also participated in writing radio drama. Moreover, he is a poet. He's a poet who has great poems, the latest of which was about tolerance, a voice that penetrated our hearts before. Please put your mobile phones on silent. Please also fill in the form in order to develop our upcoming events. And I would like to highlight that we have simultaneous interpretation for this event. And then, from Allah, the compassionate, the merciful, ladies and gentlemen, peace be with all of you. In accordance with the directives of His Highness Sheikh Khalifa bin Zayed Al Nahyan, the President of the UAE, God bless him, to declare the year 2019 as the year of tolerance, to underscore the role of the UAE as the global capital of tolerance, and to underscore the values of tolerance in the culture. It's an honor and a pleasure, in the name of His Excellency, Dr. Jamal Sennett Suwaidi, the Director General of the ECSSR, to welcome all of you to this lecture today, which is entitled Tolerance as Embodied by the UAE's Wise Leadership, which will be given by His Excellency Mr. Khalil Ailabouni, a media professional and head of the Office of His Excellency Dr. Al-Otaiba, Special Advisor to His Highness the President of the United Arab Emirates. Mr. Khalil Ailabouni was played a key role actually in the Voice of Palestine radio as a presenter of radio shows and programs on the 2nd of December in the year 1971. He had the honor of declaring the establishment of the United Arab Emirates. And the relationship between Mr. Khalil Ailabouni and the late Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan, God bless his soul, and the fact that he accompanied him on many of his journeys had a great impact on developing his cultural skills. Now it's an honor to call upon Mr. Khalil Ailabouni to give his speech and give the lecture. Please, the floor is yours. In the name of Almighty Allah, the Compassionate, the Merciful. First, I would like to apologize that while I'm here today, I'm not in really good health. I still suffer from pain. This pain, which I describe it as the same way Al-Mutanabbi said, it's a pain that I've tried to overcome by everything, and it still goes deep down in my body and drives my agony. Yet, even with the pain that I'm feeling, I still would like to love and to talk about a highly important topic, and I really appreciate this topic, which is tolerance. Tolerance is the key characteristic of our wise leadership. This lecture will not be something that you can expect. It will be different in its content. It will be a talk from the bottom of my heart, because I lived the true value of tolerance. Since I arrived in Abu Dhabi on the 1st of January in the year 1971, I have been living this value of tolerance in its best format, with a wise leadership that started by that great leader, that generous leader who left our world and passed away. Yet he passed down this great message to his sons and to the people of the United Arab Emirates, to which he dedicated his entire life and sacrificed everything for its sake. The late Sheikh Zayed, God bless his soul, was an embodiment of his great values. Moreover, he did not really derive this generosity and this great capability to be tolerant and to be patient and to attain his self-composure from anyone except Almighty Allah. All these were blessings from Almighty Allah granted to him. One of the brothers of Hatim al-Ta'i told his mother, I want to be as generous as my brother Hatim, who was known for his generosity. But his mother said, you can't. And he asked why. He said, when Hatim, she told him, Hatim, when he was a child, he would not even drink breast milk until all his brothers are really full. But you go before him, so you cannot even be as generous as Hatim al-Ta'i ever. So this shows that sometimes, I'm not saying always, but sometimes, this kind of tolerance and this charismatic character that does good deeds is really blessed by Almighty Allah. The late Sheikh Zayed was really blessed by Almighty Allah. Since the inception of his rule, and as the ruler of Abu Dhabi and the Eastern region, and started as a ruler in the city of Al Ain, He was a highly tolerant and passionate leader. He perceived everyone as brothers and sisters. He did not save even his own money. He did not even have his own money. He was helping everyone with everything he owned to ensure that the people of the tribes living in Al-Ain would have the things that they really need. What they needed the most back then in Al-Ain was water. Al-Ain had a number of water wells which were flowing in the aflage. These aflage sometimes were filled with mud, and they had to be dug and cleaned to reach the source of the water and clean it. So water would emanate from it and flow from it. So he used his own money to clean those aflage. When one of the prominent figures visited the region in February 1969, he described the late Sheikh Zayed as that the British government spent 5,000 British pounds to clean the aflage. But I found out actually that the late Sheikh Zayed spent on the cleaning of the aflage and discovering new wells from his own money. And he managed to secure water to all the agricultural areas in Al-Muwaja'i, and he managed also to register 3 weeks of irrigation for the entire region instead of 5 limited weeks. He added 3 more weeks to the irrigation season. He spent 50,000 rupees per year back then. How did he come up with that money? Oil was not even available back then. It was not discovered back then. There was no source of income for the United Arab Emirates back then. So the late Sheikh Zayed, as far as I remember, he submitted a request for a loan to the representative of the British government. They wanted to know why. It was during the reign of the late Sheikh Shakhbout, God bless his soul, his brother. He requested a loan for Al-Ain region. When he was asked, what do you want that money for? He said, this is a personal thing. I need it for a personal matter. But when they observed him, they were really surprised to find that the money he borrowed, he spent all of it to buy pumps, to pump water out of those aflage and let the people of Al-Ain irrigate the agricultural land and thereby resolve all disputes. He did not do that just because he wanted to do goods, but he wanted also to prevent the disputes that could erupt because of the absence of someone's approval to give up his share in water or to stop irrigating his farmland. The late Sheikh Zayed managed to resolve many of the conflicts that were happening between the tribes back then, and therefore he earned the trust of all the citizens back then. He earned their love and passion and support, and they were listening to him and they accepted his decisions so that peace would prevail. All the wars of the late Sheikh Zayed were a constant call for peace and fraternity. This is what the late Sheikh Zayed managed to achieve at the beginning of his position as a ruler. How did he become a ruler? The power was transferred to the late Sheikh Zayed on the 6th of August in the year 1966. And the late Sheikh Shakhbout abdicated the power back then, and the late Sheikh Zayed took over without a single blood shed, a single drop of blood shed, because the late Sheikh Zayed was never the man who would accept bloodshed. He was never an unjust ruler. He was just and fair. He continued to respect his brother, the late Sheikh Bout, until the late Sheikh Bout passed away, and he left our world with dignity and respect by the late Sheikh Zayed. I recall in this context, and I hope that you would play now the video in which the late Sheikh Zayed talked about tolerance, because it's a good start for this lecture. It's a duty. It's a duty. The greatest of all, the greatest, the God is the greatest, Almighty Allah forgives and tolerates. We humans, we are all human beings. We are brothers and sisters in this humanity. Everybody moving in this way or in another way, all are brothers and sisters, whether they are right or wrong. So why don't we help those who made mistakes and bring them to their senses by tolerance? Why don't we forgive those who make mistakes so that they would understand that we need to support them? We will not walk away on them. We would not leave them or turn them into an outcast. No, we will help them to get back on the right track. Any individual who helps another will never be forgotten. And even if he is forgetting, even if that person forgets, a friend will remind him, have you forgotten that this good man helped you while you were in a difficult situation? Then he will come back to his senses. He will definitely come back to his senses. Do we have any greater words than what you have heard about tolerance by the late Sheikh Zayed? May Almighty Allah have mercy on his soul. He did not say this just as a speech or something theoretical. No. He exercised the value of tolerance himself. In every step of the way, in every decision that he has ever made, the spirit of tolerance was quite clear and was quite firm in his heart and his mind. It was my destiny and my good luck that enabled me to live that value of tolerance. I was close to the late Sheikh Zayed, God bless his soul, due to the nature of my job as the manager of the office of His Excellency Dr. Mana Saeed Al-Otaiba, who was always accompanying the late Sheikh Zayed. He was more like a son to the late Sheikh Zayed. I remember, as a beginning, that tolerance was not only among the people of the UAE, or that he forgave only the people of his country. No, the late Sheikh Zayed forgave everyone. He used to call for tolerance, even at the global level. I recall that in December in the year 1994, when we were in Casablanca, after the Islamic Summit Conference, we were sitting at the court of the late Sheikh Zayed, and there were many people from his accompanying people and his guests who have come to greet him, and His Excellency Dr. Mana was in that session with him. And the late Sheikh Zayed asked him, Mana, this war which took place and erupted between a brother and his fellow brother, between two Arab countries, didn't this war make you feel something? Didn't you write a poem about it? He said, yes, Your Highness, I wrote a poem about this. And it was entitled, What's Left? He said, recite it to me. I had already memorized that poem, so I recited it on behalf of His Excellency Dr. Mana. after I finished reciting it, while I was reciting it, I was scared because it was a very bold poem. It highlighted the pains of an Arab individual who has to fight a fellow Arab. I was afraid that the late Sheikh Zayed would not like that poem. After I recited the whole poem, I looked at the face of the late Sheikh Zayed, and tears were in his eyes, not rolling down his cheeks and not going away, just tears in his eyes. We were in total silence for 3 minutes. Then he said, Mana, have you published this poem? He said, yes, I have published it in the newspapers, and I've recited it on TV in Abu Dhabi TV. And he said, and who has heard this poem? We Arabs, we forgive our enemies, but if our brother makes a mistake, we never forgive them. And this is something that is unacceptable. The late Sheikh Zayed moved away and the session was over. And I could not encompass what was said by the late Sheikh Zayed. What did he really mean? I was surprised on the following days that the aid was sent from the United Arab Emirates to Iraq in a massive and unprecedented manner. Aids in terms of food and medicine. I was surprised that he asked Dr. Mana and told Dr. Mana that your poems as of now should be about tolerance and calling for tolerance, and also calling for lifting the blockade on Iraq. And this is what Dr. Mana did. His Excellency Dr. Mana wrote a number of poems about tolerance and calling for tolerance. Then he recited his poem, Let's Lift the Blockade. And please allow me to recite this poem, because it really is, it was a poem, a historic poem that Dr. Mana received massive criticism afterwards, even by some fellow citizens in the GCC, because they accused him of being someone who is trying to call for forgiving Iraq after the criminal operation they conducted by occupying the state of Kuwait. And this was not the case, because he said in the same poem in which he called for tolerance, he said, are we going to become striving for objectives that I believe all of us have falsified the concept of jihad. We need to remember and to realize that all the victims are from us. In this poem, Lift the Blockade, he said, from the flow of your generosity, my rivers have flown, and the flowers have flourished. Now I'm coming today to say and to recite words of wisdom, express in pride my hand and stretch my hand towards the great leader, Sheikh Zayed. You have said all what we wanted to say to a brother and a neighbor whom we want to reform and to be kind to, so that our night would radiate with the lights of tolerance. Oh, my master, this is the time of candidacy. Why should we conceal our flaws and let those who have occupied our hands to forgive them and even attack our own brothers? Those who would accept imposing poverty and suffering and hunger on our brothers, those are the ones who should be really the object of our anger. It is a quite clear case. We will always remain Arabs. We will always remain Arabs. This is our destiny. So let's respond to the call of destiny. Either we belong wholeheartedly to the Arab world and their generous leaders. If we deny our roots, they will be cursed by that. I would sacrifice my soul for you, Sheikh Zayed, father of Sheikh Khalifa. You have said it quite clearly. This is your brother. You need to forgive him so that Almighty Allah would forgive you. Grant him with love and passion a second chance to return to you as a good brother. The blockade will not benefit you in anything, and the long blockade will not change anything. I have never felt good in a minute or a time where my brothers are suffering and their children are dying because of hunger and lack of medicine. This is a real disgrace. Do you want them to become filled with anger and remorse so they would try to continue suffering? If Iraq continues to suffer, one day it will rise like a titan, and we will have a generation of angry people. Beware those angry children in the future. Your wisdom makes us see the danger that looms in the horizon. You are, Sheikh Zayed, our great leader. You are honest and sincere. You are calling upon unifying our nation, as those barriers and borders are meaningless. You are a wise leader, and we take pride in your ruling. You are the one who guides us in times of need. Explain it and say it to the whole world. You are explaining it. Baghdad is an Arab capital, and it will always be. Look at it in pride and in glory. Let's end the catastrophe there. We must discard wars, and all wise brothers are ones who have love and passion for fellow Arabs. Let's be completely united in our identity. Say it clearly, father of Khalifa. You are a great minaret of wisdom and love and passion in your nation. You are the pride of our nation among all nations. You are the light of hope in our world, the Sheikh Zayed. This poem was the embodiment of the way of thinking of the late Sheikh Zayed in terms of tolerance. Tolerance was not just empty words. No, actually tolerance for the late Sheikh Zayed was based on actual stances that he adopted. I will give you an example in an event that I was informed about it by Mr. Abdullah Nwais, who was the Undersecretary of the Ministry of Information. I wish him a speedy recovery because he has been suffering from a certain ailment and disease, but now he is much better. He said one day he was in the car with the late Sheikh Zayed, and they were heading to Qasr al-Bahr. Suddenly, another car hit us, and the impact was very strong. The person who crashed into our car with his car flipped over, and the late Sheikh Zayed was injured in his shoulder. And when I asked him "Are you okay, Your Highness?" He said, "I'm okay, but go and check that individual who hit our car. I don't think he is in good condition." He said, "You matter the most, Your Highness." He said, "No, go to that individual, the man in the car who is probably injured. Go and help him first." They did go to him. He was an Omani driver from Oman. They took him in the ambulance to the hospital, and the late Sheikh Zayed made it clear that he must be treated and no harm would come to him. And of course, the late Sheikh Zayed also went to the hospital. When he was in the hospital, he asked about that man, that Omani driver, and he said, "He is here." He was told he was in that hospital. So he went to him, he made sure he was okay and checked on him. And when he left, the report said that the driver, the Omani driver, made the mistake, but the late Sheikh Zayed said no, he didn't mean it, and this is just an act of destiny. And the driver went to him, so he gave him a new car, and instead of the car that that was smashed, and he also gave him money as compensation for that, because the late Sheikh Zayed was very generous. So he forgave him after the damage that he did, and not just forgiving him, no, he also gave him money. He treated them with total generosity. This is the pinnacle of tolerance. This is the epitome of tolerance. I have never ever heard about someone who has this kind of tolerance, this great tolerance. The late Sheikh Zayed, God rest his soul, always had a smile on his face whenever he met any individual calling him by his name. He used to speak to everyone and talk to them and check how they were doing, how their children were doing. He never made you feel that you were talking to a president of a great country like the UAE. You would feel that you are talking to your father, to a father who is quite passionate and kind to others. And this is the great value of being a leader. A leader and a president can impose fear, but the late Sheikh Zayed imposed love and passion and earned respect. He let everyone respect him and love him. The late Sheikh Zayed taught us many things. The late Sheikh Zayed taught me many things. Among those things that I learned from the late Sheikh Zayed, I wrote this poem in the free poem style. The late Sheikh Zayed taught me that love is the way to Almighty Allah. That love is more like a prayer. Almighty Allah loved all beings. That is why Almighty Allah has been and will always be all-hearing. Almighty Allah taught us to dispel our anger quickly. He taught us that anger and hatred is the way to suffering, in which the people filled with hatred goes in the world with suffering, with nothing other than anger that burns his heart like a fire. Almighty Allah taught us not to hate anyone, not to be angry and too angry with our children, not to leave our homelands. He taught me until love became more like a religion for me, through which I worship Almighty Allah, because love is the way to Almighty Allah. He taught me that love is the way of building nations for our sons and our grandchildren, while hatred is the way to bloodshed. The late Sheikh Zayed taught me that we must love our homeland and that hatred destroys nations. He taught me that love is the way to Almighty Allah, that love is more like a prayer. He taught me that love is a minaret. Love is the emanating light of passion that resolves all conflicts. He taught me how love protects homelands. I kept reading and learning from him. It has been engraved in my heart. I follow in his footsteps with love and compassion, and I will continue to love all the Emirates of our country. In the 2nd of December in the year 1971, we declare this love. I came to Abu Dhabi, as you know. I was received by Mr. Mufid Mari, who received me when I first arrived to Abu Dhabi in the 1st of January. He was one of the founders of Abu Dhabi Radio. He called me to work. So I came and he waited for me at the airport on the 1st of January, the year 1971. I used to hear about the late Sheikh Zayed, but hearing is not like seeing. Since the first day of my work in the Emirate of Abu Dhabi, I went to Al-Ain and I went to the late Sheikh Zayed's court. Many people said, welcome, how are you doing, Zayed? He says, come my dear, come Ahmed, come so and so. He called them by the name. He knew them one by one. And he said, some people would come, you have not solved our problems in Liwa. And he said, we have solved them for you, just come. He was really keen on solving all problems in a single minute. Even in the year 1971, he didn't own much. Our production of oil back then was no more than half a million barrels per day. And the price of oil back then, what we earned back then was less than $1 per barrel. Yet, he continued to build. He would spend all the income he earned from oil on the country. He would not keep a single dirham. He would not keep a single dollar. Except for highly critical issues. He always focused on building and on ensuring happiness for his people. That is why he was never angry. He was quite tolerant, continuously tolerant. And this tolerance was not an individual kind of tolerance or a personal kind of tolerance. It was based on a global leadership perspective. I was really surprised that in the year 1971 a church was built for Christians and a school was established for it was called the Rosary Nuns School. So imagine in the GCC, one of the GCC states, where everything should be purely Islamic in nature, the late Sheikh Zayed had a unique character in which tolerance was not based on individuality or personal things or the things that we have or own or our perspective. It had a global perspective. He believed wholeheartedly and he always repeated that we are the sons of a single father, the sons and children of a single father. No matter how diverse our religions or our intellectual backgrounds are, we will remain humans and brothers and sisters in humanity. I remember that one day we were sitting and having lunch together. So he noticed the late Sheikh Zayed noticed that one of them was not eating meat. He was eating salads only. So he asked them, why, Hannah, you are not eating poultry or meat? He said, Your Highness, I'm fasting. He said, what kind of fasting is it you are doing, Hannah? He said, the fasting of Mary. He said, I know. Bring him fish and rice. And they did. And he ate. And he said, do you know that the Holy Quran praised the dignity of Mary much more than what Christians has done? And he started reciting a number of verses from the chapter of Mary in the Holy Quran. So he realized, the Christian man realized that the Sheikh Zayed memorized those verses and implemented them in reality. He exercised this tolerance with all people from all religions, Christianity, Hinduism, and he treated all people equally. He used to say, we are an example of what nations must do. We must lead the way in tolerance and give an example to the whole world about the meaning of tolerance. And this is what he did in reality. And this is what he transferred to his sons. His sons were not only His Highness Sheikh Khalifa bin Zayed and His Highness Sheikh Muhammad bin Zayed and His Highness Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed. Those are his real sons and direct sons. Yet he considered the entire citizens of the UAE his own sons and daughters. That is why he passed this message to all of them, and they have followed in his example. And the Emirati nationals, wherever they are, have become role models for tolerance and love and being passionate about helping humanity. He did not have a single atom of hatred in his heart. He paid special attention to building human capital. And he used to say, it's not important for me to build large skyscrapers, nor palaces, nor gardens, nor factories. What matters the most to me is to build human capital. Those people, those citizens will never be built without knowledge, culture. We have to empower them. We have to grant them the value of tolerance and the values of being kind to human fraternity, and to avoid all the elements that may reflect negatively on humanity or the image of Islam. Islam is the religion of love and passion and tolerance. The late Sheikh Zayed was a genuine Muslim, a Muslim to the heart. He was a great man that reached new heights of perfection. He used to say, I would never pray without ensuring that my heart is free from hatred. We must forgive. And what you have heard in this lecture was really the philosophy and ideology upon which the United Arab Emirates was established. We take pride. The fact that the UAE is considered globally now the true model of ethical globalism. And this is the way that other nations should behave. This is how other people should be tolerant to others. Thank you. We have run out of time. Maybe I've taken too much time, but I would like to thank you very much. Forgive me. We are in the year of tolerance, so please be tolerant with me and forgive me. Thank you. Would like to thank Mr. Khalil Ailabouni for his wonderful lecture and sharing the stories and activities he lived with the late Sheikh Zayed, God bless his soul, which highlighted how tolerance was really in-depth in his life. More than happy to answer. Now we'll open the session for Q&A. If you have any questions or intervention, please stand up, introduce yourself, and make your question as brief as possible to take as many questions as we can. Please. Forgive me, it's not a question, it's a comment. Good afternoon. My name is Mufid Mar'i. Good afternoon to all, good evening to all of you. Good evening to all of you. It was really great to enjoy those great moments about tolerance and the fact that you lived and you encountered many situations and you had many experiences with the late Sheikh Zayed. In the introduction, you stated that you wrote a poem about tolerance. It is the same poem about Zayed taught me. If you please, you can tell us about, recite to us the poem of tolerance. In the beginning, I believe maybe I wrote more than one poem about tolerance, and the poem that you are looking after is Forgive Me. Do we have time to recite it? Please. Forgive me. And forgive me for my sins when you pray to Almighty Allah. Almighty Allah is fair and would always love to hear about love. If you don't hate me, forgive me. Don't leave my heart. Love will grant us peace. And hatred is the fuel for war. And I am, with all my sins, I acknowledge my sins. So please forgive me. And don't call for crucifying me. In the name of the Lord, I always say, please forgive me and don't be looking at me in disdain. Love is calling us. Can you hear it? Or have you shut the windows of your heart? Please forgive me and God will forgive you. Avoid saying no, no to me. Those who disdain the acts of forgiveness, they are still far away from the forgiveness of Almighty Allah. And those who believe in love will meet the call, accept the call and forgive me. It's a very long poem, but I'm just giving you only a glimpse of it. We'll take another question, please. My name is Dr. Minda Al-Afifi. I would like to thank you, Dr. Khalil, very much. This is one of the sessions in which we get to know him as one of the oldest, well-cultured individuals in the UAE. Dr. Khalil introduced us to the great times and reminded us of Ahmed Saeed and Sawt al-Arab that we used to hear back then. And he also highlighted the concepts of tolerance and how the late Sheikh Zayed imparted him. And the late Sheikh Zayed was known for his tolerance. And Arabs are tolerant by nature. If a killer approves, if a killer, even a murderer, apologizes to you, you have to forgive him, because this is the concept of tolerance. But His Highness Sheikh Mohammed Zayed is also transforming this tolerance to be a methodology for the UAE that is covering the entire nation, being tolerant with those who deserved to be tolerant, to be forgiven, and thereby trying to amend the mistakes of those who made mistakes. The UAE is establishing a ministry for tolerance, and that is why the late Sheikh Zayed was really the founder of tolerance. Thank you very much. This is just an intervention. Thank you. Thank you, my dear. I was not really fully aware of, or let's say, I did not really cover the full tolerance of the late Sheikh Zayed. Only there is also the great tolerance of His Highness Sheikh Khalifa bin Zayed and His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed. There are many things to be said about their tolerance, but unfortunately I did not have enough time to talk about examples of tolerance by His Highnesses, their Highnesses. But that is why maybe there will be a chance to give you the lecture, and then the center can publish it. But I stress the fact that the current incumbent leadership of the UAE continues to shoulder the mission of tolerance and the concept of tolerance, and reach the epitome of tolerance. And for the first time, and in this country, we see that a country in the region is hosted Pope Francis, who represents more than 1 billion Christians, Catholic Christians, alongside His Eminence, the Grand Imam of Sheikh Al-Azhar, Dr. Ahmad Al-Tayyib. Both leaders, both great leaders, meet here. They met here in the capital, Abu Dhabi. This event is really the epitome of the philosophy and the ideology of tolerance, which was laid and established by the late Sheikh Zayed, and was completed and enhanced and extended by his sons. And what His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed did in this regard reflected the pinnacle of tolerance and continued the message of the late Sheikh Zayed, who inculcated and instilled the value of tolerance in all Emirates. Thank you very much for attracting my attention to this point. Thank you. Please. My greetings to you, Mr. Khalil Ailabouni. We learned from you, from your voice and your long-standing voice in the radio, that we have learned a lot from since we were young children. Mr. Khalil, tolerance and forgiveness cannot be really genuine unless the person who forgives is in a position of power, whether it is moral or the spiritual power. He needs to be in this highly strong position to duly exercise the value of tolerance. Tell us more about this spiritual and ethical power of the late Sheikh Zayed and the Sheikhs of the United Arab Emirates through your experience and interacting with them at many stages. Thank you very much. Thank you for this question. Clemency and forgiveness when you have the upper hand is the basic concept. When the late Sheikh Zayed forgave that Omani driver, he could have easily punished him, yet he forgave him. He was in a position of power, yet he forgave him. So forgiving when you have the upper hand is what is really meant by tolerance. He has always been in the position of power. I wanted to highlight how he hated the disputes among Arab nations and how he wanted to reconcile the countries that had disputes among them. This can be the subject of another lecture in the future, because I lived and experiences that attest to the efforts exerted by the late Sheikh Zayed to resolve the disputes, and sometimes he made sacrifices, spending from his own money to ensure that this peaceful reconciliation materializes. So peaceful efforts are great, but tolerance, when you have the upper hand, is a great thing. But tolerance is really a spiritual value, whether you are in a position of power or not. Either you can forgive those who have done wrong to you. This means you are really a tolerant individual. And I can say that the late Sheikh Zayed was never an angry or bitter individual. He never hated anyone. Even those who were his worst enemies, he used to forgive them. If we wanted to follow suit, what did he have in terms of power? Imagine that he took a very strong position against the US in the 1973 war. He adopted that courageous stance, even despite the power of the United States back then. He wanted to achieve a value, and he really achieved it. The late Sheikh Zayed did not learn tolerance from a theoretical book. tolerance was part and parcel of his entire journey in life, with every step that he had taken in his life. He did not learn tolerance from someone. He taught us to us all. This is what I want to say. Please. Dr. Rida Mustafa. Thank you. It's a wonderful lecture, Mr. Khalil. I hope that you would kindly highlight what's the future vision in which we can combine all of these documents, or even print them in small booklets that highlight the value of tolerance, so that children learn from the very beginning in their lives. We've been in this domain and we've read about it, but what have we left for the new generations, future generations, so they would always continue to follow in the footsteps of the founder of this great country? I call for, through Your Excellency and the competent authorities and the ECSSR, I call for compiling all of these great examples of tolerance, and they would be printed out and then taught to all young people and all children who, after tens of years, they would learn from the great figures who accompanied the Sheikh Zayed. Maybe tens of years from now, all those who accompanied the Sheikh Zayed will may not be with us. Imagine that even in China, the Confucianism, which appeared 2,000 years ago, is being taught to students in China now, after 2,000 years. So we need to teach those great values. This is really something that I submit this proposal to you to communicate with the competent authorities. No matter how we spread it in social media is a transient phenomena. We need to have a book that keeps these documents for future generations. Thank you. This is a thorny and a tough task. Compiling those sayings will not be enough. We want the curricula in the entire Arab world to be based on teaching young people tolerance and forgiveness. And this collides with many obstacles. I rest assured that here in this great country, the United Arab Emirates, and with this wise leadership, we have started not just teaching young people and children the principles of tolerance. We are exercising tolerance. We are in a country that is free, a free country. I'm talking it for the first time on a topic like this one, which is a tough topic, yet I don't feel, even if I make mistakes, I don't feel afraid. I am a human being, and human beings make good decisions and bad ones. But the main element that should remain in all of our hearts is love, is tolerance, is the fact that I must not be angry or angered by an idea or something that a colleague said. I must accept it no matter what it is, even if it is full of harsh and unfair criticism. We must accept it. We must learn how to accept others. We must learn how to forgive others. Without this spirit, we will always continue to learn to listen to high voices, and the noise, facts disappear and love vanishes. God willing, you will see in this state and from this wise leadership, you will see great things that will bring happiness to all Arab people, and will be a sign of hope to all humanity. We are the country of love and tolerance, and our wise leadership is the leadership of tolerance and wisdom. We help others. We offer to others, even those who hate us. We help them and we assist them, because this is what we learned from our great leader, the late Sheikh Zayed. May God bless his soul, and thank you very much for listening. With those great words, we conclude this lecture. Once again, in the name of His Excellency Professor Jamal Salim Suwaidi, Director General of the ECSSR, I would like to express our gratitude and thank Mr. Khalil Ailabouni, and thank all of you, ladies and gentlemen, for your kind attendance, and we hope to see you in other upcoming lectures. Thank you, and peace be with all of you.